This coming Yontif, Shmini Atzeres / Simchas Torah, in Eretz Yisrael it's the same day, but in Chutz La'aretz we have Yontif Sheni Shagolio, so Monday will be Shmini Atzeres, and Tuesday we'll celebrate Simchas Torah, the finishing of our Torah. It used to be, the original cycle was we didn't finish the Torah we only finished it every 3 years. We used to have a 3-year cycle. 3-year cycle meaning not how some just read a third from each parsha and then they go back next year. That's not the way it ever was.
Some people do that. I can't believe it.
But the original cycle meant you took 3 weeks to finish Bereshis, you moved on to Noach, Lechacha, etc. So I guess at some point, they changed the takana and they wanted at least every year, annually, every Jew should at least learn Chamishe Chumsha Torah. So therefore, by hearing it and doing Shai and Mikra, however you're going to do it, we finish the Torah every year.
It was the Takana of Ezra in the 3-year cycle.
Yeah, well, that was before Ezra, back in Yerushalmi. That was they say in Yerushalmi.
They had this before.
Yeah, and then whether it was part of Ezra. Ezra had many takanas of Kriyas HaTorah, whether this was one of them. At what point At what point did Simchas Torah historically become part of this holiday? In fact, it could be this is the Machloket in the Gemara and Megillah. Which Haftorah do you read? There's a discussion if you read from the beginning of Yoshua. I think the Bavli says, and others said, you do in Yoni Diyom of Shmini Atzeres. So Tosfos points out from the Gaonim, what's in the Kudas HaMachloket? He said originally before they finished the Torah, so why would you read from Yoshua? You read from Inyani Diyoma. But once they instituted to finish the Torah, so it makes sense. I just finished Vizos HaBracha, now I'm going to read from Yehoshua. And in fact, that's what Rav Soloveitchik points out, that that Simchas Torah is unique in the sense that usually we have the practice was on Shabbos we have minimally we have 7 Aliyas, and Yontif was 5 Aliyas. And usually the Haftorah is a little longer on Shabbos than Yontif because the Gemara says you go 7 times 3 or 5 times. You try to have at least 3 psukim in the Haftorah to every Aliyah. So that's why if you notice in Yontif usually the Haftorah is usually shorter. So usually the halacha is that we don't make, and the Mishnah tells us in Megillah that we make hosafas, that one is permitted. Everyone agrees. The Mishnah says one can make hosafas on Shabbos. And that seems to be the practice in many shuls, that you have other simchas or other issues you bring and you call more people. And that's the practice. On Yontif, the minhag seems to be that we don't have hosafas. That Yontif, we just have the 5 aliyahs and that's it. That's the practice. Even though Me'ikar Adin we actually do, because the question whether mafter is included, we do mafter not included in the 5. So technically speaking, we even do hosafas on Yontif, because that's the real din. The real din on a tainus, you see it. Mincha for a tainus, we have 3 aliyahs, but the third one is the mafter. So therefore on Shabbos a Yontif Me'ikar Adin, you could actually have extra aliyah. So instead of having 5, you could have 6. But on a weekday, you can't have a hosafa, bitul malacha, whatever. That's the whole issue. Why are we allowed to have aliyahs on Shabbos? So Rashi writes because of bitul malacha. The whole reason we don't have extra aliyahs is people got to get to work. It's a tircha to tzibur. But on Shabbos, even you have to get to work. You tell us to go to work, so we're not going to recognize it officially, and therefore we're going to add out bitul malacha. The Duran gives a different reason, not necessarily arguing. Maybe in addition, he says, no, the reason why Shabbos. So therefore, according to Rashi, it would make a difference. Yontif also. You can't work on Yontif. So Yontif, Shabbos, and perhaps Chol Hamoed, or not, that's just about Chol Hamoed, there are built-in heterim about Sarach HaMoed, but let's leave this Yontif. And for most people, the focus is on the Chol and not the Moed. But there are heterim on Chol Hamoed. It's not the same. No one says working on Chol Hamoed is like working on Shabbos and Yontif. You're allowed to work in on Chol Hamoed in many instances. So they point out that according to Rashi, there shouldn't be a difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov. It's Bitul Malacha. So therefore, according to Rashi, you shouldn't have you should be able to have Osafas on Yom Tov, which we said Meikar Adin you can, Alaminig is not to. However, the Ran gives a different reason. The Ran says the number of Aliyas in that day is a reflection of the Kedushas Hayom. So a regular day you have 3, a Chol Hamoed so that's not a regular day. You have 4 Aliyas. On a Yom Tov you have 5. A Machlokas in the Gemara, whether 6 for Yom Kippur, 7 for Shabbos, or 7 or 6 for Shabbos, 7 for Yom Kippur. If you're wondering, we pass in 6 for Yom Kippur and 7 for Shabbos. And therefore the Ran writes, that's why you can have Osafas on Shabbos only, because on Yom Tov you had if during the week you had a Osafah, it looks like you're making it into a Chol Hamoed. On Chol Hamoed, if you have a Osafah, it looks like you're changing it into Kedushas Yom Tov. If you do 6 on Yom Tov, it looks like you're turning into Kedushas Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, you make a Osafah, it looks like you're turning into Kedushas Shabbos. So therefore, the only one you're allowed to have a Osafah is because Shabbos is the king anyway. You have more than anyone else. You have 7. So what's the difference, 7 or 20? It might make a difference to the people in Shul, but in terms of showing how the reflection of the Kedushas Hayom wouldn't be affected. So therefore, so according to Rashi, you shouldn't have Osafas either on Shabbos, or you can have Osafas on Shabbos and Yom, which is Meikar Adin. We passed it, but in practice, you only have them on Shabbos. And according to the Ran, you can only have Osafas on Shabbos, not on Yom Tov, which seems to be our practice, because you don't want to change, you want to keep Shabbos to the top. In fact, why then? There are some minig in yeshivas that don't have Osafas even on Shabbos. Not only yeshivas, different shuls, different hashkama minyanim, they won't have any Osafas. They only have 7. Why? If the Mishnah says clearly you can have Osafas on Shabbos, so why would anyone be more machmir than the Mishnah? And that's the minig hagra. The Gra's shita was not to have Osafas even on Shabbos. So why, today we can ask that question, why be firmer than the Mishnah? People have a lot of chumras without much basis, but the Gra had very good reasons for his halacha. So why is it that why do people not have it? That's because we have many differences in the takanas we have today on Kriyas Torah and the original takanas. The original takana it was only that you always had 7 aliyas, but the Kohen got bracha rishona. You called me up, I didn't say a word, and you called up shlish Ravi. It was only the first person who got the aliyah made the bracha, and the one who concluded made the bracha. So the Gra said, so that was Mizvan HaMishnah. There's no problem. Call up 20 people. You're not adding unnecessary brachas. There's no issue. You could call up as many people as you want. But once they changed the takana, for whatever the reason was, that each person who gets an aliyah makes his own bracha, so he felt then you shouldn't be making osafas because you're adding perhaps, maybe it's a shaila adding 2. So 7 brachas, 7 aliyahs, Meikar Adin. Everyone agrees, even though the practice was, according to some, that only the first person had an aliyah, but it wasn't like carved in stone that you weren't allowed to. It was more like if you came on time and heard the person's bracha, you didn't make a bracha. But if you popped in the middle of Ravi and didn't hear a rishon, then you got called up, you would make a bracha. It wasn't like you couldn't make a bracha. The practice was you did. But Meikar Adin, everyone can make their own bracha. So therefore, but the Vilna Gaon felt that once they changed the institution, he didn't want to. Okay, Meikar Adin, you're right. We can make 7. Everyone can make their own bracha, but we shouldn't add 2. And that seems to be the meaning in many yeshivas. And many just have it. It's not besides being a halachic issue. People, it's a tircha de tzibor. You start calling people up unnecessarily, and might say they don't need the funding, or whatever the case is, and therefore that's the practice in many places, that they don't have more than 7 aliyahs even on Shabbos, even though, again, we do have mafter, so Meikar Adin, they're not going, by definition, you have mafter, not Olol Minyan Shiva like we do on Yom Tov and Shabbos, so by definition, we're having a Hosafa. Because if else you'd make mafter, the last aliyah, like we do on a tiny Sibor. So that's what they point out, to the different that practices. That's one of the many changes we have in Kriyas Torah. Was it used to be everyone got only the first person made a bracha. And in fact, that's how some were shot. There are many more, but the Gemara says, what's special about the last 8 psukim, the ones we're going to read on Simchas Torah, V'zos HaBracha, the last 8 psukim. There's a whole discussion in the Gemara about who wrote the last 8 psukim, because it says, Yamashah Moshe Eved Hashem. So Rabbi Yehuda says, it's mixed with Keshikra. How could it be Moshe? The Torah is Emes. It must have been Yoshua. And Rabbi Shimon says, Chas v'shalom, are you kidding me? Heresy, you're telling me it's Torah's Moshe. Moshe didn't write the whole Torah. No. Moshe did write the last 8 psukim, but Moshe, it was different. Moshe kosei b'dema. He wrote it, let's say, literally with tears. We'll get into what that means. But it was written differently. So, my nafkamina, what's the difference? Whatever pshat we're going to give on that issue, and also on what Yachid Koreas, and there are 5 different pshatim, but one of the pshatim related to us is, I think Tosfos quotes from Rabbeinu Meshulam in Megillah that, what do you mean Yachid Koreas? Again, going back to the old practice, the original practice was, you think there was no free lunch. If you got called up for an Aliyah, you had a lane. What do you mean? It wasn't like, okay, so let's go. So therefore people were hiding in the back, or they were going out. They didn't want to get called up because, laning, you got to prepare, you got to know something. And therefore, so the original practice was the one, and that's why, and then why did we stop it? Not to embarrass the Eino Baki. It was one of the institutions, not to embarrass, that's why some say, well, you have the Masada Kiddushin do the brachas at the wedding instead of the chassan, not to embarrass the chassan if he doesn't know how to make the bracha. So one of the institutions we have is the Baal Kor. We have a designated reader. That you have a person, therefore, no matter what, the Baal Kori reads, and you have to embarrass someone who doesn't know how to read themselves. So that was the practice for many years until they changed it, because people weren't showing up, they getting embarrassed, whatever the issues were, and we have a designated reader. So the original practice was originally it was the one. Then so our practice today is you have the Baal Koreh and the Oleh. So you have 2 people going up. So Rabbeinu Meshulam says we go back for the last 8 psukim, Yachid Koreh Osam. We go back to the original institution. The one who gets called up for the Aliyah, does the last 8 psukim. But it's still not the it was the practice when I was getting Chassan Torah and laning. So it might be the practice coincidentally, but I think I'll have someone else lane. So it won't be. Hopefully it won't be the practice this year, because that means I'll be laning. But either way, so that's the Yachid Koreh Osam, and in fact that's why it's not right. Sometimes people, I think amongst Sephardi Kehilas, they still have the original institution. They don't care about embarrassment. No, they have the people. I guess it's the same tune anyway, and so therefore they get up and they lay anyway. So I think the Sephardim still get. Because I've been in shuls where people get up and they start laning, and it's really not proper, because they changed the institution. Because then you're making motzilas on everyone else. So you know how to lay, but no one else did, and you read from the laning. So that's. But on Simchas Torah we do a lot of things differently, and that's one of them. That the last 8 psukim, that's the Rabbeinu Meshulam, when Yachid Koreh Osam, we go back to the original institution, that there is no Baal Koreh. The one who gets called up, I guess in this case for Chassan Torah, would actually do, lane the last 8. That's not the practice. We don't follow Rabbeinu Meshulam, but that's how he learns the pshat Yachid Koreh Osam. So, getting back, we have a machlokes. Rashi says bitul malacha. If it's bitul malacha, you can have Hosaf on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Any other day you don't go to this is Isser malacha. And according to the Ran, no, it's in order to keep the Kedushas Hayom. So Rav Soloveitchik pointed out we have an exception to the rule on both sides. So normally our practice on Shabbos we have Hosafas, on Yom Tov we don't. So what's the scenario where on Shabbos we don't have? When on Shabbos don't we have Hosafas? Usually on Shabbos we do. When don't we have Hosafas on Shabbos? Correct. When Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, so then the minhag is we just have 7 Aliyas. We don't have, like we just said, we don't have Hosafas, because we go with the minhag on Yom Tov. When is the rule? When do we have Hosafas and it's not Shabbos? Simchas Torah. This coming Tuesday, the minhag is, we go. Everyone gets an Aliyah. So why is that Why are these two the exceptions to the rule? Because the rule of salvation claim. Because what are we laning? When Yontif falls out on Shabbos, do we read Parashat Shavua or Inyani Diyoma? Inyani Diyoma. So it's a din of even though it's Shabbos, but the din of a Kriyas Torah on Yontif. So we go with the meaning of Yontif, no Hosafis. But on Simchas Torah, we're reading Parashat Shavua. We're finishing the Torah, and we're starting Bereshit. So therefore, it's a din of a Shabbos. It's a din of a Shabbos, so we go with the din HaMishnah, that what is permitted to have Hosafis. In fact, that's the practice that everyone gets an Aliyah on Simchas. Everyone who wants will get an Aliyah on Simchas Torah, yeah?
Do they not lane when Eretz references that they lane Shmini and Simchas Torah together, so they would do what they initially do. I can't remember. Is it Shmini Atzeret is laning first?
Yeah, I guess you have. Yeah, I guess,
and then they start, and then they
it's a good kash. I guess it would make sense because you have to read Shmini. Yeah, unless they just do the mafti. I'm not sure. I haven't been in Eretz Yisrael, and I forget. It's a good kash what they do. They definitely finish those habracha, and then I guess they. And we do a mafter for Shmini Atzeret, but the question is, what's the laning? Do they also lane what we do on Shmini Atzeret? It's a good kasha. I'm not sure what the minig is.